When Officer Daniel stopped at a remote gas station with his little daughter, he expected nothing more than a quick fuel stop. But the moment she pointed at a German shepherd sitting beside a ragged old man with a cardboard sign, "Dog for sale," unveilert, his entire world shifted. "Daddy, can I buy that dog?" she asked innocently. Daniel turned toward the dog and froze. What happened next shocked everyone. Before we start, make sure to hit like and subscribe. And really, I'm curious. Where are you watching from? Drop your country name in the comments. I love seeing how far our stories travel. The sun hung low in the sky as Officer Daniel pulled into the quiet roadside gas station, the engine of his patrol car humming softly as it came to a stop. Emily, his 7-year-old daughter, pressed her face against the window, her curly hair bouncing as she shifted excitedly. She loved riding with her father on his off-duty errands. Every small outing felt like an adventure. "Daddy, can I pick the snack today?" she chirped, already unbuckling her seatbelt. Daniel chuckled. "Only if you don't choose candy for dinner again." She giggled and pushed open the door, hopping out with a carefree energy he admired. For a moment, everything felt normal, simple, peaceful, something Daniel rarely experienced in uniform. But then Emily froze. Her eyes drifted toward the far edge of the parking lot, near the curb, beside an overstuffed black backpack and a piece of cardboard scribbled with shaky handwriting. "Dog for sale." Vive Dollern, sitting cross-legged on the concrete, was an older man with a weathered face and gray beard, bundled in a torn jacket despite the warm weather. His boots were frayed, his jeans ripped at the knees. His eyes, tired yet kind, lifted as he noticed Emily staring. Beside him sat a German shepherd, strong, alert, but thin. His coat was dusty, his ears perked sharply at every passing sound. Even sitting still, the dog carried an undeniable, commanding presence. Emily's breath caught. "Daddy, look." Daniel followed her gaze, and his stomach tightened. The homeless man gave a faint smile, patting the dog gently. "Don't worry, he's friendly," he said, voice rough but soft. "Just trying to find him a home." Emily took a cautious step closer, eyes shining with curiosity. "He's beautiful," she whispered. Daniel approached slowly, assessing the situation the way years on the force had trained him to do. The dog didn't bark, didn't growl. He simply watched Daniel with intelligent, steady eyes. Something about that gaze tugged at him. A strange prickle crawled up his spine. He'd seen eyes like that before, somewhere, but the thought slipped away before he could catch it. Emily tugged his sleeve. "Daddy, why is he only $5? Daniel didn't answer right away. He could hear the tremble in her little voice, the sadness already blooming in her chest. The homeless man shrugged. "People don't want older dogs," he murmured, "especially ones that come with a past." Daniel's eyes narrowed slightly. A past? The wind shifted, and the dog lifted his head, staring straight into Daniel's eyes. And for a heartbeat, Daniel couldn't breathe. It was as if the world went still. The gas station, the sounds, the cars. Everything faded, except those eyes, those familiar haunting eyes. Something wasn't right, and Daniel felt it deep in his bones. The wind picked up slightly, rustling the cardboard sign at the homeless man's feet. Emily took another small step forward, her pink sneakers crunching against the gravel. The German shepherd's ears twitched, but his eyes never left Daniel. Not once. The intensity of his gaze felt almost personal. Daniel rested a hand on Emily's shoulder. "Sweetheart, stay close, okay?" His voice was calm, but there was a tension in it that Emily rarely heard. The dog slowly rose to his feet, stretching his stiff legs. He wasn't aggressive, not even remotely, but there was something deliberate about the way he moved. Controlled, disciplined. The homeless man noticed, too. He usually only reacts like that to loud noises," he muttered. "Not to people." Daniel frowned. What do you mean? The man scratched his beard. He's different, almost like he's waiting for a command. He chuckled softly. Not for me, though. I've never been able to figure out what he knows. Sometimes I think he understands more than I do. Daniel's pulse quickened. Emily crouched a little, her hand hovering like she wanted to pet him, but she waited, remembering the safety lessons her father taught her. Daddy, he's not scary, she whispered. He looks sad. And she was right. The shepherd's eyes weren't the wild or desperate eyes of a stray. They were calm, calculating, like he was studying them, recognizing something, or someone. The dog, suddenly, stepped away from the homeless man and took 2 deliberate steps toward Daniel and Emily. His head lowered slightly, his ears tilting forward. Not aggressive, more like acknowledging. Emily held her breath. Daniel stiffened. Something deep in his memory sparked, a forgotten instinct slamming awake. He knew dogs. He'd trained with canines for years. He could read posture, body language, intention. And this dog wasn't confused or lost. He wasn't acting like a stray at all. He was acting like a working dog. Easy, Daniel murmured, his hand drifting near his belt out of the old habit. Let's give him some space. But the dog stopped right in front of Emily. He sat, perfect posture, straight back, head high, like he was presenting himself. Emily looked up at her father. Daddy, why is he sitting like that? Daniel's mouth went dry. He knew exactly why. Working dogs sat like that when meeting someone they trusted, someone they recognized, someone they had served with. But that didn't make sense. It wasn't possible. The dog looked up at him again, eyes filled with an emotion Daniel couldn't name. Longing, recognition, hope. And for the first time, Daniel truly saw him, not just as a stray for sale at a gas station, but as a dog with a past that wasn't done with him yet. Emily's small fingers curled around Daniel's hand as she stared at the German shepherd, who now sat perfectly still in front of her, his tail gently brushing the pavement. She tilted her head, her pink bow swaying. Daddy, he likes me. Daniel swallowed hard. He's a trained dog, sweetheart. He's different. Emily knelt slowly, careful not to startle him. The dog didn't move. Instead, he lowered his head until it was level with hers, eyes softening in a way that made Daniel's chest tighten. Hi, Emily whispered, voice light and trembling with wonder. I'm Emily. The dog blinked slowly, almost respectfully. Walter, the homeless man, watched them with a bittersweet smile. He took to her fast, he murmured, faster than I've ever seen him take to anyone. Daniel forced his attention away from the dog's familiar posture and back to reality. This was just a child and a dog bonding. That's all. That's all it had to be. But Emily wasn't letting go of the moment so easily. Her voice drifted up, soft but hopeful. Daddy, can we buy him? Daniel froze. Emily tugged his hand. Please, he needs a home. He's all dirty and thin and nobody wants him. She pointed at the sign lying against the backpack. $5. That's not a lot. I have that in my piggy bank. Her innocence, her pure sincerity, hit him like a punch to the chest. Emily, Daniel began slowly, choosing each word with caution. We don't know anything about this dog. He might be sick or injured. He might have problems we can't see. Emily's lower lip quivered. But what if he just needs us? The dog looked at her, then at Daniel, then back at her again, almost as if he understood the conversation. Daniel felt the weight of Emily's silent plea settle heavily on his shoulders. Walter cleared his throat. I ain't trying to guilt nobody, he said gently. But he's a good dog, best one I've ever met. Just been through a lot. Daniel shifted uncomfortably. That feeling he'd been trying to ignore, the one whispering that he knew this dog, came back stronger. Emily placed her tiny hand on the dog's neck. He leaned into her touch, closing his eyes as if savoring a comfort he hadn't felt in years. "Daddy," she said again, this time barely a whisper. "I love him already." Daniel took in the scene. The weathered man who'd clearly cared for the dog despite having nothing. The shepherd sitting with soldier-like patience. And his daughter, who had always had a heart too gentle for the world. He exhaled slowly. This wasn't just a strayed dog for sale. This was something deeper, something familiar, something waiting to be uncovered. And saying no suddenly felt impossible. Walter adjusted his worn jacket as Daniel approached him, the weight of the moment hanging thick in the air. Emily stayed beside the German shepherd, her small hand resting gently on his back. The dog remained perfectly still, as if afraid that any sudden movement might break the fragile connection forming between them. Daniel crouched beside Walter, lowering his voice. "Sir, can you tell me where you got this dog?" Walter let out a tired sigh. "Figured you'd ask." His eyes drifted toward the shepherd, full of something between sadness and quiet pride. "Truth is, I didn't go looking for him. He found me." Daniel's brows furrowed. "Found you?" Walter nodded. "About 3 months ago. I was sleeping behind an abandoned warehouse out near the old industrial road. Middle of the night I hear this awful whining. Thought it was some injured coyote." He chuckled softly. "Turns out it was him." Emily looked up, wide-eyed, hanging on every word. "I ain't never seen an animal in that kind of shape," Walter continued. "Burns on his side. Deep cuts. Looked like he'd been through hell and back." He swallowed, and he kept looking behind him like someone was still after him. Daniel's heartbeat quickened. Walter rubbed his hands together for warmth. "I took him in the best I could. Cleaned his wounds, fed him scraps. Fella barely slept. Always listening, watching, like he was trained for something important." His voice softened. "But he never hurt me. Not once." Emily gently stroked the shepherd's neck. "He's kind," she whispered. Walter nodded. "Yeah, but he's seen things. You can tell. He don't flinch at noise, don't chase cars, don't beg for food, just sits like he's waiting for orders that ain't never coming." Daniel stared at the dog, every instinct in him screaming that this story wasn't random. That scar on his flank, the alert posture, the unwavering focus. Emily tugged Daniel's sleeve. "Daddy, he was hurt, and Walter helped him. That means he's a good man, right?" Walter lowered his eyes, embarrassed. "I ain't asking for pity. I just can't keep him no more. He needs someone better, someone he can trust." The shepherd looked up at Daniel then, straight into him, as if silently confirming Walter's words. And in that moment, Daniel felt something old, familiar, and painful stir inside him. Memories he had kept buried, a past he thought he'd healed from. This wasn't just a stray dog. This was a dog with a story tangled with his own in ways he didn't yet understand. Daniel's breath hitched as Walter's words echoed in his mind. Burns, cuts, watching behind him. He'd heard those descriptions before, lived them. The shepherd shifted closer to Emily, brushing his muzzle against her knee. She giggled softly, but Daniel barely noticed. His vision blurred at the edges as a memory he'd fought to bury clawed its way back to the surface. The warehouse, the fire, the explosion. "Daddy," Emily whispered, sensing something change in him. Daniel blinked hard, forcing himself to stay grounded, but the past surged anyway. 3 years earlier. Rain hammered against the windshield as Daniel sped down the road, sirens slicing through the night. Beside him sat his partner, his best friend, K9 Shadow. The German shepherd stared ahead, muscles tense, waiting for the command he trusted more than anything. A tip had come in, A weapons trafficking ring operating out of a remote warehouse. Dangerous men, multiple suspects. Reinforcements were minutes away, but Shadow didn't wait for backup. He never did. Daniel and Shadow made entry through the side door. The smell of oil and chemicals hung thick in the air. Shadows shifted in the dark. A door slammed. A gun cocked. Shadow lunged before Daniel could react. A gunshot erupted, then another. Shadow didn't stop. Daniel shouted commands, sharp, urgent, but the chaos swallowed everything. Shadow wrestled a suspect to the ground just as a stray bullet struck a stack of gas canisters. The explosion was instant. Heat, light, a deafening roar. Daniel was thrown backward into a metal beam. His ears rang. His vision flickered. Through the flames he saw Shadow, burned, bleeding, trying to crawl toward him. "Shadow, no, stay!" Daniel screamed, dragging himself forward. But a second explosion ripped through the warehouse, swallowing the dog in a wave of fire and debris. The world went silent. When the firefighters pulled Daniel out, he fought them, screaming Shadow's name, begging them to go back. But all they found in the rubble was a torn K9 vest, charred and unrecognizable. Shadow was declared dead, a hero who gave everything. Daniel never forgave himself. The memory shattered, leaving Daniel breathless. He stared at the shepherd standing beside Emily now, alive, whole, watching him with those same steady, intelligent eyes. Eyes he had seen in the flames. Eyes he thought he'd lost forever. His legs weakened. Emily looked between the dog and her father. "Daddy, why are you sad?" Daniel swallowed, voice barely a whisper. "Because he reminds me of someone." The shepherd slowly stepped closer to him, head tilted with gentle recognition. Walter watched, confusion mixing with curiosity. "Officer," he said quietly, "you okay?" Daniel couldn't answer. Because deep down, far deeper than he was ready to admit, he already knew the truth trying to claw its way to the surface. This wasn't just a reminder. This dog looked exactly like Shadow. Daniel felt a chill crawl up his spine as the German shepherd stepped closer, slow and deliberate, like he was approaching someone he'd known in another life. Emily watched with innocent fascination, but Daniel was frozen. The dog stopped directly in front of him. For a moment, neither moved. The air between them felt charged, heavy, like the world was holding its breath. Then the shepherd lifted his paw. Not randomly, not clumsily, but with precise, deliberate intention. A training gesture. A gesture Daniel had taught only one dog in the entire world. His throat tightened. "No," he whispered under his breath. That's not possible." The shepherd gently tapped Daniel's knee, then sat back on his haunches, straight-backed, alert, waiting for a command. Exactly how Shadow used to sit during duty. Walter looked between them, eyebrows raised. "Well, I'll be damned. He's never done that for me." Emily's eyes widened. "Daddy, what does that mean?" Daniel didn't answer. His mind raced, flickering through memories he'd spent years trying to bury. Shadow rolling over on command. Shadow tapping. His knee when he sensed Daniel was upset. Shadow sitting tall, like a soldier ready to receive orders, the exact same movements, the same posture, even the same faint scar across the shepherd's flank. A scar Daniel himself had treated years ago. His breath caught. He leaned closer, heart pounding. "Let me see your side, boy," he whispered. The dog turned obediently, almost knowingly, exposing the burned patch of fur near his ribs. Daniel's knees nearly gave out. Emily tugged his sleeve, sensing the shift in the air. "Daddy, what's wrong?" He tried to steady his voice. "That scar. I know that scar. I cleaned it. I stitched it." He swallowed hard, emotion thick in his throat. "I stitched it with my own hands." Walter stared, jaw slack. You're saying this dog was yours? Daniel didn't answer. He couldn't. Words stuck in his chest like thorns. Instead, the shepherd made the choice for him. He stepped closer, rested his head, gently, tenderly, against Daniel's leg. A soft whine escaped his throat, the same soft whine Shadow used to make whenever he wanted comfort, or whenever Daniel came home after a long shift. Daniel's eyes burned with tears he didn't let fall. His hand trembled as he touched the dog's head, the familiar texture of the fur sending a wave of memories crashing into him. Emily blinked slowly. "Daddy, is he Shadow?" Daniel's voice cracked. "I don't know," he whispered, "but God help me. He feels like him." And the shepherd closed his eyes, pressing closer as if saying, "I found you again." Emily slowly stepped toward the shepherd, her small hands clasped together, eyes wide with the kind of gentle bravery only children possess. She glanced up at her father, making sure it was okay. Daniel nodded weakly, still struggling to steady his breathing. His world felt like it had tilted, memories and reality blurring together. But Emily's presence grounded him. The dog sat perfectly still as she approached, his ears perked forward, tail resting lightly on the pavement. He wasn't tense. He wasn't cautious. Instead, he seemed hopeful. Emily knelt in front of him and whispered, "It's okay. You're safe now." The shepherd lowered his head, inch by inch, until his forehead gently bumped against hers. Emily giggled softly, a warm, melodic sound that seemed to loosen the tightness in Daniel's chest. "Daddy, look, he's giving me a hug." Daniel swallowed hard. Shadow used to do that. Every single time Emily scraped her knee or cried after a bad dream, Shadow would nuzzle her forehead, grounding her with his calm strength. The dog lifted his paw and placed it carefully, almost delicately on Emily's knee. She wrapped her tiny fingers around it without hesitation. Walter exhaled in disbelief. "Kid, I don't know what kind of magic dust you got, but he's never been like this with anyone. Not even me." Emily beamed, proudly. "Maybe he knows I want to help him." Daniel watched the interaction unfold with a mixture of awe and pain. The familiarity, the mannerisms, the gentle protectiveness. It was all too real. Emily turned her head toward Daniel, her voice soft but full of certainty. "Daddy, he's not scary at all. He feels like a hero." The shepherd's ears twitched at the word hero. He lifted his head slightly, gazing at Emily with warm, softened eyes, and gave a tiny wag of his tail. Just one. Slow. Intentional. Emily gasped. "Daddy, he wagged his tail. Did you see?" Daniel nodded, emotion tightening his throat. "Yeah, I saw." Emily gently stroked the dog's cheek. "I think he likes me, and I like him too." The shepherd leaned into her touch, fully, trustingly, resting the weight of his head on her lap. Emily wrapped her arms around him, hugging him as if they'd known each other for years. Daniel felt something inside him break open. This dog, whether he was truly Shadow or not, had chosen Emily the way Shadow always did, the way a protector chooses the one they were meant to protect. And as Daniel watched his daughter embrace the shepherd, he saw something he hadn't seen in a long, long time. A flicker of hope. Walter shifted uncomfortably as he watched Emily and the shepherd together, his weathered hands clasping and unclasping in his lap. The way the dog leaned into the little girl, the way he responded to Daniel, was something he hadn't expected, something he couldn't explain. Finally, he sighed, rubbing his face with both palms. "Guess I owe you the whole truth," he muttered, voice low and heavy. Daniel turned to him, posture stiff. "I'd appreciate that." Walter pulled his backpack closer, dragging it between his legs. "I didn't tell you everything earlier, not because I wanted to lie, but because I wasn't sure anyone would believe me." Emily kept petting the shepherd, humming softly, her presence, soothing the dog enough that he lay down beside her. His head rested across her lap, eyes half closed with the first sense of peace he'd shown in a long time. Walter pointed at the dog. He wasn't just injured when he found me. He was terrified. Daniel's heartbeat quickened. Terrified? Of what? Walter shook his head. That's the strange part. He wasn't scared of people. Not loud noises. Not cars. He leaned forward. He was scared of shadows. Movements behind him, like someone had hurt him before, and might come back. Emily paused, her small hand frozen mid-stroke. Ah, poor doggy. Walter's voice softened. I thought he'd run from something, maybe an abusive owner, but then I found something. He reached into his backpack and pulled out a worn scrap of black fabric. Daniel's breath caught before he even saw it clearly. Walter unfolded it. A torn patch, charred around the edges, stiff with ash. Emily squinted. What is that? Daniel didn't move. Walter looked at the patch with a mixture of awe and sorrow. It was stuck to his vest when I found him, burned almost to nothing, but he turned it, revealing the faint outline of a K9 unit emblem. I know what this means. Emily gasped. Daddy, that's like your badge. Daniel reached out slowly, fingertips trembling as he touched the patch. It was real. Too real. Why didn't you bring him to the police? Daniel asked quietly. Walter hesitated. Because the night I found him, he wouldn't let me. Daniel blinked. What do you mean? He growled, not at me, at the direction I tried to walk. Walter's eyes darkened, like he was protecting me from going back, like whatever happened to him wasn't finished. A cold chill prickled across Daniel's arms. Walter exhaled shakily. I didn't steal him. I didn't hide him. I just fed him, took care of him, and prayed that someday the person he was searching for would find him. Emily looked up at her father, eyes shining. Daddy, he was searching for you. Daniel's breath faltered, and the shepherd lifted his head, looking straight at him with a familiarity that went deeper than memory, deeper than time. Daniel stood frozen, the torn K9 patch trembling in his hand. The world around him, cars passing, the ding of the gas station door, footsteps on concrete, blurred into a dull, distant hum. All he could see was the German shepherd resting his head on Emily's lap. Shadow. Or a dog who looked impossibly like him. Emily stroked the shepherd's ears gently, whispering to him like she'd known him all her life. The dog responded with soft, rhythmic breaths, his body visibly relaxing under her touch. Daniel's heart ached. He wanted to believe. God, he wanted to believe so badly. But logic screamed at him from every corner of his mind. Shadow couldn't be alive. He had seen the explosion. He had heard the building collapse. He had held what he believed was Shadow's vest in his hands. He had grieved, buried, mourned. Yet here stood a dog who shared every behavior, every muscle twitch, every trained instinct Shadow ever had. A dog who responded to Emily the same way Shadow used to. A dog who recognized him with a depth no stranger could mimic. "Officer," Walter murmured, pulling Daniel out of his spiral, "you look like you've seen a ghost." Daniel let out a shaky exhale. "That's exactly how it feels." Emily looked up, eyes wide with concern. "Daddy, are you okay?" He forced a small smile for her sake. "Yeah, sweetheart, I'm just thinking." But inside, he was anything but okay. What if this is Shadow? What if he survived? What if he needed me all this time and I never found him? The guilt slammed into him like a tidal wave. He remembered the promises he'd whispered into Shadow's fur after every shift. "I'll protect you, like you protect me." Promises shattered by an explosion he couldn't stop. He remembered Shadow jumping into the cruiser each morning, ready to work, ready to serve. never asking for anything in return. He remembered Shadow dragging him out of danger more than once, saving him more times than Daniel could count. And now, maybe Shadow had crawled through hell, through fire and smoke and darkness, only to end up alone, starving, terrified, and Daniel hadn't been there. "Daddy," Emily's voice softened. "He chose us, don't you feel it?" Daniel's eyes flicked to the shepherd. The dog watched him, not with desperation, but with patience. Quiet hope? Like he was waiting for Daniel to open a door only he could unlock. Walter broke the silence. "Look, I don't know what he was before, but I know loyalty when I see it. This dog's been searching for someone, and it damn sure wasn't me." Daniel's chest tightened. He was a cop, a father, a man who lived by reason and evidence, but standing here, staring into those familiar brown eyes, logic didn't stand a chance. What if the impossible was true? What if Shadow had found his way home? The moment hung still, Emily cradling the shepherd's head, Walter watching anxiously, and Daniel wrestling with the possibility that the impossible was standing right in front of him. Then everything changed. A deep, throaty growl rumbled in the shepherd's chest. Not the soft, affectionate sound he gave Emily, not the gentle whine he used with Daniel. This was sharp, alert, instinctive. His ears shot up, his body stiffened, every muscle pulled tight like a drawn bow. Emily froze. "Daddy, what's wrong?" Daniel followed the shepherd's stare. A dark-colored truck had pulled into the far corner of the gas station. Not near the pumps, not near the store. Far back. Too far. The engine idled for a moment before cutting off. The windows were tinted, concealing the faces inside. Then 2 men stepped out, broad-shouldered, tense, moving with a coordination Daniel recognized immediately. Not civilians, not drifters. These were men used to danger. Walter muttered under his breath, "I've seen those types around the warehouses. The ones abandoned after that nightmare fire." Daniel's jaw tightened. Shadow, if it was Shadow, let out another growl, deeper this time. He stood up in front of Emily, positioning himself between her and the approaching men. His posture was unmistakable, protective, ready, dangerous. Emily grabbed handfuls of the dog's fur almost instinctively. "Daddy, he's scared." "No," Daniel corrected gently, stepping closer to them. "He's protecting you." The 2 men walked casually at first, pretending to survey the gas station. But their eyes flicked repeatedly toward the shepherd. Daniel saw the moment recognition struck one of them. The man's expression faltered. Just a fraction. But enough. He nudged his companion, whispering sharply. Daniel's instincts roared to life. The shorter man muttered something Daniel strained to hear. "That's the damn dog. I thought he burned." Emily's breath hitched. "Daddy." Daniel's heart hammered. Every detail clicked with terrifying clarity. Shadow hadn't just survived the explosion. He'd escaped something. Someone. The men approached the edge of the pavement. Closer, closer. Eyes locked on the shepherd. Daniel stepped in front of Emily, one hand resting subconsciously near his holster. "Can I help you?" Daniel called out, voice steady but firm. The taller man forced a smile that never touched his eyes. "Nice dog you got there, officer." Daniel didn't blink. "He's not mine." The man smirked. "Not yet, anyway." Shadow snarled, teeth bared, an unmistakable warning. Walter took a nervous step back. "Officer, those ain't good men." Daniel knew. He knew before Walter said it, before Shadow growled, before the men took another step. Trouble hadn't just appeared. It had come looking. And somehow, Daniel realized with a chill, it wasn't after him. It was after the dog. The 2 men stopped a few feet away, their false smiles dropping like masks made of wet paper. The taller one, shaved head, scar on his chin, squinted at the shepherd with unsettling focus. "Yeah," he muttered. "That's him. I'd know that mutt anywhere." Shadow's growl deepened, vibrating through the concrete under Emily's feet. She clung to his neck, trembling. Daniel shifted subtly, placing himself between the men and the kids, Emily and the dog. "I'm going to ask you both to step back." The shorter man snorted. "Relax, officer. Just admiring the merchandise." Daniel's jaw tightened. "He's not merchandise." "Sure he is," the tall one shot back. "That dog cost us a lot of money when he ruined our operation." Daniel's heart stuttered. "Your operation?" Walter gasped softly behind him. The men exchanged a glance, one dripping, with arrogance and poorly concealed anger. The shorter man shrugged. "Warehouse on Milton Road, 3 years ago. Big explosion. Lost everything. Weapons. Cash. Half our crew." He jabbed a thumb toward Shadow. "Because of him." Daniel felt the ground tilt. The air rushed from his lungs. "You were there." The tall one took a step closer, cracking his knuckles. "We were in that building when he tore through our guys. Damn dog nearly took my arm off." He lifted his sleeve, revealing a jagged scar. "And then your cops showed up. Ruined the whole operation." Daniel's pulse thundered. "The explosion wasn't an accident." The men chuckled darkly. "Accident?" the shorter one echoed. "Nah, we set the charges. Insurance scam. But your dog," he pointed at Shadow, "he messed up everything. Went after us like a demon. Should have died that night." Emily gasped, tears filling her eyes. "Don't say that." Shadow stepped in front of her again, blocking her completely from view. His body shook with restrained fury, but he didn't lunge. He held steady, waiting, ready. Daniel felt cold dread sink into his bones. He stared at the shepherd, the scars, the posture, the unmistakable fire in his eyes. This wasn't coincidence. This wasn't a look-alike. This wasn't a miracle he imagined. This was Shadow, his partner, alive. And the men standing here were the ones responsible for nearly killing him. The tall man's smirk slid into something darker. "We thought that explosion took him out. Guess we were wrong." Daniel's voice turned to ice. "You hurt a police K-9. "That wasn't no dog," the shorter one snarled. "That was a weapon." Daniel stepped forward, his hand firm on his holster. "He was a hero." Shadow let out a low, lethal growl, a sound that promised one thing. This time, he wouldn't run from the danger. This time, he was ready to finish what began in that burning warehouse. The air snapped with tension so sharp it felt like electricity. One wrong move, one raised voice, and everything would explode again, just like that warehouse years ago. But this time, the stakes were even higher. Emily. She clung to Shadow's fur, tears trembling on her lashes. "Daddy, what do they want?" Daniel's voice was steady, but his pulse hammered. "Stay behind Shadow, sweetheart. Don't move." Shadow shifted, his stance lowering, muscles coiled like a spring. His eyes locked onto the two men. Cold, focused, fearless. The wind stirred around them, but Shadow didn't flinch. He was in full K-9 mode now. The taller man sneered. "Look at him. Ready to fight again, huh?" He stepped forward. Shadow exploded. Not uncontrolled, not wild, perfectly calculated. He pushed Emily backward with his body, shielding her entirely, before launching forward with a fierce bark that ripped through the parking lot. "Stop!" Daniel barked, drawing his weapon in one fluid motion. The men froze, startled by the sudden shift. Shadow didn't attack. He stopped inches away, teeth bared, a warning perfectly measured. Daniel positioned himself beside Shadow, gun trained steadily on the suspects. "Hands where I can see them." The shorter man laughed nervously. "You think you're going to shoot us in front of civilians?" Daniel didn't blink. "If you take one more step toward my daughter, I won't hesitate." Shadow growled, inching forward, forcing the men back with each subtle movement. Walter grabbed Emily and guided her behind the patrol car. "Stay low, kiddo," he whispered, but Emily's eyes never left Shadow. "He's protecting us." "Again," she whispered, voice trembling. The tall man lifted his hand slowly. Okay, we're just talking." "No," Daniel said, voice cold and controlled. "You're threatening. Big difference." The shorter man's arrogance cracked. "We just want the dog. He's dangerous. He knows too much." "You're right," Daniel said. "He knows exactly what you did." Shadow barked sharply, stepping closer, forcing the men to retreat until their backs touched the side of their truck. Daniel moved like a trained machine, dialing 911 on his radio, keeping his weapon steady. Backup needed at Miller gas station. 2 suspects involved in the Milton Road explosion. Sirens echoed faintly in the distance. The taller man panicked. "We're not going to jail because of a dog." He reached for his waistband. Shadow moved first, a blur of fur, muscle, and precision. He lunged, not to kill, not to maim, but with a perfectly targeted hit that knocked the man's hand away and sent him sprawling onto the concrete. The shorter man tried to run, but Daniel caught him, pinning him to the ground. Emily watched with wide, awestruck eyes as Shadow returned to her side, nudging her gently, making sure she was unharmed. She wrapped her arms around his neck, sobbing with relief. "You saved me," she whispered. Shadow closed his eyes and leaned into her hug, just like he used to. Police sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder with every heartbeat. Daniel kept his weapon trained on the suspects until 2 patrol cars screeched into the gas station, officers jumping out to assist with the arrest. But amid the chaos, Emily didn't move from Shadow's side. She held him tightly, refusing to let go. And Shadow, battle-scarred, bone-tired, still shaking from the confrontation, rested his head in her lap, letting her tiny hand soothe him like nothing else could. Walter stood a few feet away, and his shoulders shook, not from fear, from guilt. Daniel finally turned to him. "Walter, you all right?" Walter swallowed hard, eyes glistening. "Should have told you everything sooner, officer. Should have come clean the moment I realized he wasn't just some stray." Daniel softened. "You didn't know who he belonged to." Walter shook his head quickly. "No, that ain't why." He stepped closer, voice trembling. "I was scared you'd take him away. He saved my life out there." Emily looked up, confused. "He saved you?" Walter nodded. "Those men, they ain't just criminals. They hunt people who cross 'em. One night, I saw them hurting someone behind that warehouse. Shadow jumped in front of me when they spotted me." His breath shuddered. "He took a hit for me, protected me. A dog I didn't even know." Emily covered her mouth. "Oh no." Walter blinked away tears. "After that, I couldn't leave him. Not when he needed me. Not when he could barely walk." Daniel stepped closer, his expression gentler now. "You kept him alive." Walter scoffed through his emotion. "Barely. I ain't no hero. I'm just a broken old man who didn't want to watch a good dog die." "No," Daniel said firmly. "You're the reason he survived long enough to find us." Walter's jaw quivered. "I didn't want to. Give him up. Felt like losing the only friend I got left." He looked at Shadow, lying peacefully against Emily. "But seeing him now, with you two, I know. This is where he belongs." Emily stood and walked over to Walter, wrapping her tiny arms around his waist. "Thank you for saving him," she whispered. Walter froze, then hugged her back with shaking hands. When she pulled away, he wiped his eyes roughly. "You take good care of him, all right?" Shadow lifted his head, staring at Walter with a soft, grateful expression, as if giving his own silent goodbye. And for the first time in years, Walter smiled. Faint, fragile, but real. The flashing police lights faded as officers drove away with the 2 suspects in custody. Quiet settled over the gas station again, But the emotional storm within Daniel only grew heavier. Shadow, alive, breathing, warm beneath Emily's hands, sat proudly beside her, though exhaustion tugged at every muscle in his body. He leaned against her leg, eyes soft, trusting her completely. Emily knelt and hugged him tightly. "Daddy, we can't let anyone hurt him again." Daniel exhaled shakily. The weight of responsibility pressed down on him. His duty as an officer, the history he shared with this dog, and the overwhelming fear that he might fail Shadow a second time. Walter stepped back respectfully, watching the moment unfold with a quiet understanding. Emily looked up, her face streaked with tears, her voice trembling. "Daddy, please, let us keep him." Daniel closed his eyes. "Sweetheart, it's not that simple. But he needs us." Emily cupped Shadow's face gently, her small thumbs brushing over the scars that spoke of battles no animal should have faced. "He's been alone for so long. He found us. That means something." Shadow pressed his head into her chest, a soft, low rumble vibrating through him. Not a growl, not fear, but connection. Recognition. Home. Emily clung to him. "He picked me, just like he picked you before." Daniel's breath caught in his throat. Shadow lifted his gaze to Daniel, slowly, deliberately. Those deep brown eyes, the ones Daniel had memorized years ago during late-night stakeouts and long patrols, stared back at him with a mixture of longing and unwavering loyalty. The same eyes that had saved him countless times. Daniel turned away for a moment, wiping at his face. "Emily, I lost him once. I thought I failed him. I don't know if I can go through that again." Emily stood, her voice small but firm. "But you didn't fail him. He came back. He survived everything just to find us." Walter cleared his throat softly. "Kid's got a point, officer." Emily gently took Daniel's hand and led him back to Shadow. "Daddy, let him stay, please. He loves us already." Shadow slowly stood, limping slightly, and stepped forward. He rested his head against Daniel's leg, the same gesture from years ago. The gesture that meant, "I'm here. I'm yours." Daniel swallowed hard, his chest tightening. Emily whispered, "He needs a family, Daddy." Shadow nudged Daniel again, letting out a soft whine that broke something inside him. Daniel kneeled, placing both hands on Shadow's face. His voice cracked. "You came back to me, didn't you?" The shepherd closed his eyes and leaned in. Emily whispered behind him, hope trembling in her voice. "Daddy, can he come home with us?" Daniel finally nodded, tears spilling down his cheeks. "Yes, sweetheart, he's coming home." The sun had dipped low behind the rooftops, casting a warm orange glow across the gas station as the chaos finally settled. Emily held Shadow's leash, Daniel's spare off-duty one, as if it were the most precious thing she'd ever touched. Shadow walked beside her, tired but proud, tail swaying gently with each step. Walter lingered near the curb, shoulders hunched, hands stuffed into his worn jacket pockets. He looked, smaller now that everything was over, like a man returning to his quiet reality after touching a piece of someone else's world. Daniel approached him. "You don't have to just walk away, you know." Walter smiled faintly. "Dog's got a family now. That was my job, to get him safe to the next place. I ain't needed no more." Daniel shook his head. "You helped him survive. You were there when none of us were." Walter looked down, blinking rapidly, emotions welling behind tired eyes. "I just fed him scraps and kept him warm. Ain't exactly hero work." "Yes, it is," Daniel said simply, "and I won't let you walk out of here with nothing." Walter frowned. "What you mean?" Daniel's voice softened. "I'm connecting you with a veteran support program. A good one. They'll give you a room, food, medical care, and people who actually care." He added quietly, Shadow isn't the only one who deserves a second chance. Walter swallowed hard, his voice cracking. Why would you do that? For me? Daniel glanced at Shadow, who nuzzled up to Emily protectively. Because someone saved my partner when I couldn't, and I don't forget debts like that. Walter covered his mouth, forcing back tears. Thank you, officer. Thank you. Emily ran over and wrapped her arms around Walter's waist one last time. Bye, Mr. Walter. I hope you get a home, too. Walter hugged her gently. You're a good kid, sweetheart. You take care of that hero dog. Shadow stepped forward and pressed his nose against Walter's palm. A quiet thank you, a final moment of connection before parting ways. Walter wiped his face, nodded, and walked toward the patrol car that would give him a ride to the shelter program. For the first time in years, his steps felt lighter. Daniel knelt beside Emily and Shadow. Ready to go home? Emily beamed. Yes, he's coming home. He's really coming home. Shadow licked her cheek, earning a giggle before he leaned into Daniel's side with a deep, contented sigh. The weight of years, loss, and fear lifted from his shoulders. He'd found his family again. As they walked toward the car, Emily skipping, Shadow trotting loyally between them, Daniel looked down at his once-lost partner. Welcome home, Shadow, he whispered. Shadow lifted his head, eyes shining with gratitude, and nudged Daniel's hand. A family reunited, a bond reborn, a hero finally home. This story teaches us that loyalty, courage, and kindness can come from the most unexpected places. Shadow survived because people chose compassion over judgment. Walter helped him despite having little. Emily loved him without fear, and Daniel trusted his instincts even when the truth seemed impossible. It reminds us that every living being deserves a second chance, and sometimes the ones who appear broken are the strongest of all. When we protect others, stand up against wrong, and choose empathy instead of indifference, we create hope. True heroes aren't defined by their past but by the love and courage they give today.